Hi everybody, Laura Basson here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm honored and excited to be a part of Papertrey Inc.'s Stamp Affair celebration. I'm going to be featuring the first anniversary material, which is paper. And I'm going to be using a bunch of Papertrey Inc. scrap pieces of cardstock as well as some vellum and the Mighty Bloom die. Okay, so what I'm doing here is die cutting each one of these little scraps of cardstock with the Mighty Bloom die. I've been talking about this a lot lately, but my scrap bin, I don't know what happened. It just got out of control and it's overflowing. And a lot of that is Papertrey Inc. cardstock. I love the colors. I love the smoothness of it. So I chose about 6 or so pieces that went well together. I started with Raspberry Fizz, then Hibiscus Burst. I did berry sorbet, then a little orange zest. You could see I'm kind of going, I mean, it's not rainbow, but it's a nice beginning gradient look. So I go from the hot pink into the yellow. I end up with, I believe this is lemon tart cardstock. So I die cut each one of those with the Mighty Bloom die. I'm going to use all of those little pieces to create my colorful gradient design with a bit of a unique twist on the vellum. So last but not least, I'm running through the Mighty Bloom cover plate die onto vellum, and I'm going to overlay a few of the leaves with vellum with a bit of stitching. Fancy schmancy stitching, I know. So I have a panel of white cardstock. I'm just kind of taping it down so it doesn't move around with some Post-it tape. And then I went ahead and cut a scrap piece of white cardstock with that Mighty Bloom die. I'm using that as a guide just so I know where to insert all my little pieces. And now I'm taking some Tombow Mono liquid glue, and this is where that little quick pick tool, that is a lifesaver. I use that to just pick up my little pieces. I'm starting in the center with the darkest color, the Raspberry Fizz, and I just bump it up. That's where this guide helps so much. You just bump it right into the corner. I hold it down, count to like 5, just so it sticks. And then I'll go another round. This is great. It really goes pretty fast. Just a dot of that Tombow Mono adhesive around. I can do about 6 at a time. Now I'll move on to the next color, which is the Hibiscus Burst. Popping those in. You get the idea? So it takes a while. Now, if I was really crazy, which I am half the time, I would have popped these up with foam tape. But because I was doing the stitching, I knew I was going to do a little bit of stitching. I didn't want to pop anything up. I just want to keep it flat onto the panel. So I'm using very little glue, literally just a dot. And I knew I was going to do some stitching, like I said, and I didn't want to get my sewing machine all gunked up. And I have done some things similar, kind of like this before, where I had to kind of temporarily adhere things down. And I have never had any trouble with my sewing machine. I've had it a really long time. I really only use it for card making. I am not a seamstress, although I wish I could. One day I would love to make a quilt. But until then, it's going to be cards. So what I'm doing here is removing that guide. I'm trying to be really careful that I don't rip up my design. And I'm just going to pop that top part down so that I can know where those last few little petals need to go. Just put that down so I can add 3 more drops of glue, take the guide away, and insert the last 3 little, I don't know if I want to call these leaves or petals. Potato. Either way, it's done. Now here we go with the fancy schmancy stitching. Now this is hard to get the angle, but hopefully you can get the idea of what I'm doing here. What I'm doing is taking one vellum little leaf or petal, I hold it down, I tape just the side of it with some Post-it tape, just enough to hold it down, but it doesn't get in the way of the stitching. And then I just do a straight stitch. Well, let me rephrase that. I try to do a straight stitch. Rarely are my stitches ever exactly straight. I don't know what my problem is, but I'm trying to do a straight stitch. So put down the vellum leaf, tape it on the side with Post-it tape, do a straight stitch. Pull it out, snip it. Now, there are strings and thread everywhere, but it's so cool. And I just randomly picked here and there a few of the leaves to overlay. I didn't want to do every single one, just a few here and there. So now what I'm doing is flipping it over and I'm pulling the thread through. Do you know how to do that? You pull it through. I've got my little retractable needle and you can pull the thread through the back so it all looks neat and tidy on the front. And now to keep all my little loosey-goosey threads in place, I'm taping down some score tape on the back to hold everything together, and then so nothing comes loose. And there she is in all her glory. I'm going to take my big paper trimmer here and trim off any of the excess. I'm going to trim it down so that I can pop this up on a standard size card base. So I do this a lot. I trim my panels to 4 inches wide by 5 1/4 inches tall. And now for the sentiment. I'm using a word die from the Scripted die set. I've gone ahead and die cut 6 of these U word dies out of white cardstock, and I'm using spray adhesive to quickly stack them up, make it nice and sturdy and dimensional, really kind of pops off your card. And I love using the spray adhesive, especially for intricate, detailed, thin dies like that. And then now what I'm doing here is embossing a coordinating sentiment from the Scripted stamp set. I'm going to emboss the sentiment in white on a little strip of black cardstock. It says brighten my days, so it's going to be like, you brighten my days. I think this could even be an anniversary card since we're celebrating anniversaries. And then I'll pop up my panel with foam tape onto a white card base. I'm adhering my stacked up dimensional U word die, as well as popping up my sentiment strip. And then to finish it off, I couldn't resist a few sparkling clear sequins here and there. I've got several different sizes. I'm adhering those with some glossy accents, and this card's just about finished. Now, last but not least, I'm kind of folding or manipulating those little vellum stitched, popping them up so you can see the colors beneath it. I love how this turned out. Such a fabulous design. I'll trim off that excess from the word die cut. And that's all there is to it. This card is finished. A fantastic way to feature paper for the first anniversary, using up those paper scraps. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.